Have you ever felt like you're living a life that isn't truly yours? It's a quiet, persistent feeling that no matter what you achieve or how well you play your part, an emptiness remains. You might have followed the script perfectly, got the degree, landed the stable job, and built a life that society applauds. Yet deep down, there's a nagging sensation that you're a character in someone else's story, a version of yourself edited for the approval of others. This isn't just a minor discomfort. It's a profound sense of betrayal of the self, a concept Carl Jung identified as a central source of our modern anxieties. When you silence your true voice and ignore your deepest intuitions, you create a chasm between who you are and who you pretend to be. This internal conflict manifests as unexplained anxiety, a feeling of being stuck, and a general malaise with your existence. It's your unconscious mind trying to send you a message, a fire alarm you've been conditioned to ignore. Jung believed our souls send us signals, persistent desires, recurring dreams, and urges that refuse to be silenced. Ignoring these calls is like turning off a fire alarm in a burning building. You might feel a fleeting sense of peace, but the danger is real and growing. This brings us to Jung's most crucial rule, the one he considered essential for anyone seeking wholeness. Stop living a story that isn't yours. This isn't just a piece of feel-good advice, it's a radical call to action. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable truth that a large part of your life might be built on external expectations rather than internal truths. The more you try to conform, the more fragmented you become. Our journey in this video will explore this rule and show you how to start living your own authentic narrative. We'll decode the deep psychology behind one of the most famous novels of all time and reveal how it serves as a powerful guide for your own journey. The acclaimed author Paulo Coelho perfectly understood this struggle when he wrote The Alchemist. This book, often seen as a simple fable, is in fact a profound psychological roadmap disguised as a novel. The protagonist, Santiago, mirrors the modern individual who starts on a path designed by others, a safe, predictable life. But like many of us, he's haunted by a recurring dream, an insistent whisper from his unconscious mind, pushing him towards something more. You're likely having these dreams too, perhaps not while you sleep, but in moments of quiet reflection, in that persistent feeling of existential fatigue, or in the question that echoes in the silence. What if my life could be different? This video is for you if you feel like you're playing the wrong role, if you're tired of pretending, and if you know there's a more authentic life waiting for you, even if you don't know how to find it. We will guide you through this necessary, though not easy, process of returning home, not to the house where you live, but to the home within you, the only place where you can finally be who you truly are. Carl Jung was not a fan of quick fixes or one-size-fits-all formulas. He knew the human psyche was far too complex for that. However, one profound truth resonated with an almost relentless clarity in his work. The greatest burden a child can bear is the unlived life of the parents. This statement is a silent earthquake, shaking the foundations of anyone who grew up trying to please others, to fit in or to belong. Jung's one rule, stop living a story that isn't yours, is the direct antidote to this burden. In practice, this means every time you act to meet an external expectation, you drift further away from yourself. Every decision you make out of fear of rejection or of appearing irrational fragments you inside. When you force your soul to follow a script not born from your own unconscious, you declare war on yourself. And this war will inevitably demand a price. Jung's exploration of alchemy and dreams revealed that every person carries a unique script for individuation, a symbolic path from the persona, our social mask, to the self, the totality of our being. This journey is anything but comfortable. It requires breaking down what is false to build something true. The first step is daring to listen to your inner world. what disturbs you, what you try to ignore, and what attracts you even if it seems illogical. These are not random thoughts. They are clues, internal maps, and signs of your own story wanting to emerge. Most people live like puppets, reacting and repeating without ever asking, "Is this truly what I want?" We often confuse security with truth, choosing an empty career because it pays well, or staying in a relationship out of fear of being alone. But Jung warned us, the worst prison is the one built with bricks of comfort. This rule is a call for an internal revolution, not an external one. It's about reclaiming your original narrative, the one that existed before the traumas, before the conditioning. It's about questioning the roles you're playing and observing the moments when you stay silent, when you wanted to scream. If you don't do this, you will remain a character in someone else's play, and the worst part is, no one will notice. Everyone will applaud you for doing everything right, but only you will know you are dying inside. This call doesn't come as a loud voice. It comes as a quiet discomfort, a persistent dissatisfaction, a feeling that something is missing even when you have everything. This is where true inner work begins. What if there was a mirror that showed you exactly this? How much of your life is real? And how much is a performance? What if that mirror was a book? And what if that book was The Alchemist? The Alchemist is far more than a tale about a shepherd searching for treasure. It's a living metaphor for the deepest process a human can undergo, the journey back to oneself. Coelho, whether consciously or not, crafted a Jungian treatise disguised as a spiritual novel. This is precisely why the book has resonated with millions, because it doesn't just teach, it reveals. It acts as a symbolic mirror, allowing each reader to see their own soul reflected in the story. Santiago is the modern individual with a seemingly peaceful, stable life. He's a shepherd who knows his flock and the rhythms of the seasons. Yet something disturbs him, a recurring dream. Jung taught that recurring dreams are not random, they are messages from the unconscious trying to break through the rational mind. It is the self, the totality of the psyche, calling the ego to embark on a journey of transformation. The treasure Santiago seeks isn't actually under the pyramids, it's within him. But to realize this, he must first cross both literal and symbolic deserts. The power of the book lies in how each step of his journey is an archetypal representation of our own internal stages. When he leaves his flock, he's not just abandoning his sheep, he's renouncing his persona, his social mask, his inherited identity. When he follows the signs, even without fully understanding them, he's surrendering to the movement of the unconscious. The book serves as a psychological mirror because it doesn't offer easy answers. It presents symbols and characters that act as psychic aspects. Each reader will find themselves in a different part of the story. Some will relate to the beginning, full of doubts and attachments. Others will see themselves in moments of blind faith when everything seems to be falling apart. And some will reach the end, only to realize that the treasure they were seeking was right where they started, but they wouldn't have had the eyes to see it without the journey. Jung once said, "What irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." In The Alchemist, what moves us most are the parts of the book that expose our own wounds, our buried desires, and our hidden fears. The book is like a magnifying glass for the soul. It doesn't tell you what to do, it shows you who you are. This narrative structure is no accident. It follows the stages of alchemy that Jung described in his work Psychology and Alchemy, the symbolic process of soul transformation. Santiago experiences nigredo, the initial darkness of doubt and loss. He then moves through albedo, when he begins to see things more clearly. Finally, he reaches rubedo, the integration of the inner gold, the discovery of his true self. To fully grasp this process, we need to look deeper at the characters Santiago meets, as each represents a psychological choice, a mirror that reveals what happens when we either listen to or ignore the call of the self. Every character Santiago encounters in The Alchemist is a symbolic representation of psychic forces within us all. They aren't just supporting actors, they are archetypal dilemmas. Jung would call these confrontations with the unconscious, moments when the ego is challenged to choose between the known and the unknown. The first major encounter is with the king of Salem, Melchizedek. He awakens Santiago's restlessness and gives it meaning. In Jungian terms, he is the mentor archetype, a manifestation of ancestral wisdom from the collective unconscious. Jung saw these figures as agents of the self, appearing in a person's life exactly when the internal call becomes too strong to ignore. Melchizedek gives Santiago a choice: continue living his inherited story or follow his personal legend. We all meet this mentor at some point, sometimes in a book, a therapist, or an unexpected event, but not everyone has the courage to listen. Later, Santiago meets the Englishman, a scholar obsessed with alchemical books. He represents the person who seeks knowledge without transformation. He wants the formula and the theory, but doesn't want to let go of control. He is the intellectual who uses his mind to avoid the pain of internal exploration. Jung warned that one of the greatest dangers on the psychological path is intellectual inflation, believing that knowing something is the same as living it. The Englishman wants the philosopher's stone, but fears the fire of transformation. If you've ever felt like you know everything about change, but can't seem to change, this character might be your mirror. The crystal merchant is an even more subtle and dangerous archetype. He represents the conformist who heard the call, but chose to ignore it. He talks openly about his dream of going to Mecca, but never leaves his shop. He prefers to keep the dream alive as an idea, rather than risk seeing it destroyed in reality. This is the portrait of millions who feed on future fantasies to numb the pain of a stagnant existence. Jung would say this is the ego refusing to die, clinging to the comfort zone even when it suffocates the soul. What's worse, this character isn't a villain. He's likable and relatable because he lives within us, always trying to convince us that it's not the right time, the risk isn't worth it, or it's better to wait for later. Finally, the alchemist emerges, the most powerful and mysterious guide. He doesn't explain, he provokes. He doesn't answer, he silences. He represents the integrated self, the one who has already made the journey and now guides others. He is the highest aspect of the psyche, the one who knows that to transform, lead into gold, you must first accept the fire. In Jungian terms, this fire is the confrontation with the shadow, with pain, and with the loss of the ego. The alchemist understands that true gold is not material but spiritual. These characters are not just literary figures, they are internal possibilities. You have been the shepherd, the merchant, and you may have tried to be the alchemist before your time. But perhaps now you are standing before the mentor, receiving the call to finally follow your own journey. Every true transformation begins with a symbolic death, the death of the false identity, the social persona, and the roles you learned to play to be accepted. Jung called this the stage of mortificatio, the crumbling of an ego inflated with certainties. And it hurts. It hurts because you begin to realize your life was built on fragile, empty, soulless structures. This is exactly what happens to Santiago. When he leaves his hometown, he's not just traveling, he's crossing an internal boundary between the known and the unknown. The first thing he encounters is loss. He is robbed and left without money, alone and disoriented. This is the collapse, the fall of the illusion of control. It is the universe saying, you want the truth, then you will have to give up security. Jung knew this moment was inevitable. The soul demands authenticity, and there is no room for it while you're trying to keep everything under control. Every obstacle Santiago faces is an initiatory ritual. When he carries glass up the hill, when he is disappointed, or when he is misunderstood, he is being purified. You can't find a treasure with hands dirty from fear, nor can you reach fulfillment while carrying weights that are not yours. The alchemical journey is violent with the ego, but compassionate with the soul. It tears you away from the lies you told to survive, only to return you to the life you were born to live. This symbolic death can also come in the form of failures, disappointments, or unexpected ruptures. Jung said, the unconscious, when ignored, manifests through symptoms. It paralyzes, sabotages, and makes you sick, not out of malice, but out of mercy, because sometimes pain is the only way to make us listen. When you start viewing these pains not as punishments but as messengers, something shifts. The desert stops being a place of punishment and becomes a temple. Loneliness stops being suffering and becomes an opportunity to listen. The fall stops being a humiliation and becomes a preparation. Santiago understands this when in the middle of the desert, he is forced to trust the invisible. When the external world stops providing guarantees, he is compelled to develop internal listening. This is profoundly Jungian. True wisdom doesn't come from the outside. It comes from contact with the self, the inner alchemist that guides, instructs, and transforms, but it only appears when the ego quiets down, the mask falls, and the resistance surrenders. Mortificatio is the beginning, but it's not the end. After destruction comes reconstruction. After darkness, clarity. Jung called this albedo, the stage where the soul purifies, intuition sharpens, and the new begins to be born. But to get there, you must endure the collapse, not flee from it, not anesthetize it, and not run back to the old story. If you escape the pain, you escape the transformation, and you remain trapped in a life that doesn't belong to you. In Santiago's case, it's only after these sufferings that he begins to see the signs more clearly. Synchronicities intensify, intuition strengthens, and he starts to trust himself more and external structures less. This is the sign that the gold is near, not literal gold, but the essence, the wholeness, the self. Now, let's explore what these signs truly mean. Carl Jung devoted a significant part of his life to studying dreams, seeing them as letters from the unconscious, symbolic messages pointing to directions the ego has not yet had the courage to consider. Recurring dreams in particular persist because something within us is insisting on being heard. They don't go away because the call has not been answered. This is precisely what happened to Santiago. He repeatedly dreams of a treasure hidden in the pyramids. At first, it seems like a simple daydream, but symbolically, this dream is an archetypal map. The treasure represents the self, the deepest core of your psyche, and the pyramids symbolize hidden wisdom. Jung taught that the unconscious communicates with us all the time, not just in our sleep. It manifests through sudden intuitions, desires we can't explain, and restlessness that won't go away. You might feel an absurd urge to change cities, end a relationship, or start something new. Everything might seem irrational, but the force of this impulse is so great that you feel you must obey. This is the self trying to take the reins. In The Alchemist, Santiago learns to follow these omens, these signs. Coelho here captures the essence of archetypal psychology. These signs are not magical in a cheap mystical sense. They are synchronicities, as Jung called them. Meaningful coincidences that mirror what is happening inside you. When your soul aligns with your purpose, the external world begins to respond symbolically. To see these signs, you must first silence the noise of the ego. You have to step out of automatic mode, let go of the need for control, and allow yourself to feel, listen, and observe. Santiago only begins to understand the language of the world when he accepts that a greater intelligence is acting through him. This has nothing to do with religion. It has to do with psychic openness, the willingness to trust that something within you knows where you need to go, even if you don't yet know how to get there. How many times have you had an impossible dream and tried to bury it? What you don't realize is that by doing this, you are rejecting your own inner guide. This is why life can begin to feel directionless, because you have ignored the map. The unconscious, tired of being silenced, starts to scream in the form of anxiety, dissatisfaction, apathy, and psychosomatic illnesses. Jung believed the greatest mistake of modern man was the arrogance of thinking he could ignore his inner life without consequences. The unconscious, sooner or later, demands its price, and it's high. It comes in the form of existential crises, emotional collapses, and feelings of emptiness. But all of this is not a punishment. It's an invitation, an insistent call for you to stop living a programmed life and start living an authentic one. Santiago finds his treasure only because he decides to honor what he feels, even when everything seems absurd. He follows the signs even when there are no guarantees, and he chooses intuition even when it challenges logic. This is what separates those who awaken from those who remain asleep. When Santiago finally arrives at the pyramids, exhausted and transformed, he is beaten and humiliated by thieves. Everything seems to have been for nothing. But in this moment of total collapse, he receives the revelation. The treasure he was seeking was always buried where it all began, under the abandoned church where he had his first dream. The message might seem cruel at first. All that pain, all that suffering, only to discover the treasure was right where he started. But this is the deepest secret of the alchemist and the exact point where Jung's psychology finds its maximum expression. The treasure wasn't there in the beginning. It only came to exist because Santiago went on the journey. It was the desert, the failures, the losses, and the encounters that transformed him. The gold was never the goal. The gold was him. Jung said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Santiago dreamed while looking outside, but he only awakened when he understood the journey was internal. The treasure is not literal. It is symbolic. It is the state of consciousness achieved by those with the courage to face their shadow, renounce external expectations, die symbolically, and be reborn more authentic, more whole, more alive. Perhaps you are waiting for recognition, love, or meaning in places that can never offer you that. Maybe the pains, frustrations, and repeated cycles you've experienced were not punishments, but invitations to your own individuation journey, invitations to stop living the story written for you and finally take authorship of your own narrative. There are no shortcuts to this. There is no ready-made map. Each human being has a unique psychic configuration. This is why The Alchemist resonates so deeply with so many people in different ways. It doesn't give you answers. It returns the essential question to you. Who would you be if you stopped pretending? You will need to cross the desert of your soul, face your conditioning, your masks, and your fears. You will have to listen to what you've spent years trying to silence. You will have to die to who you thought you should be and be reborn as who you always were. This starts now with a choice, the choice to no longer ignore the discomfort, to no longer trivialize your dreams, and to no longer accept the comfortable lie of a life that keeps you trapped. You are standing in front of a door. On the other side is your own story, but no one can cross it for you. If this video made you reflect in some way, if it touched something you perhaps didn't even know was inside you, please write in the comments, "I am ready to live my story." By writing this, you're not speaking to me, you're speaking to yourself. Please don't stop here. Watch the next video, because this journey doesn't end with an answer. It continues with a new question. See you there.